Do you think there is still a culture or climate of fear among Singaporeans, just based on your personal interactions?
Yeah, I mean, a highly unscientific view, but I think how to say? Okay, there are two dimensions of this fear. Let's call it narrative, okay? But narrative is strong emotional points, right? One is the and this one I think is a more salient fear, right? Which is the fear that we are in a dangerous world.
Mm.
However you might define this, right?
Yeah.
Economically, things could go really badly, and the wars everywhere, and it's VUCA, it's not even VUCA, it's Bani now, right? It's
Correct.
brittle, and it's all these kinds of things, right? So this language of living in danger, in intensifying danger, and the danger will filter into our lived experience, right? So it will really affect our prospects. And we might feel it in terms of relative poverty, might feel it in terms of just social immobility, or just, kind of being very precarious, right? Losing our jobs and things like that. So I think there's that kind of larger fear, and then there's also the more specific fear, right? Which is the fear of the government, right? And what the government can do to you if you vote wrongly, or if you speak inconveniently, if you dare to cross OB markers, and in that respect, the lines of OB markers are also deliberately blurred so that you would imagine the space to be smaller than it really is, right? So that kind of fear, I think, is probably still sort of in the air. It's mostly irrational, but it's still in the air. Now, let me also say that this second kind of fear sometimes is more an excuse, right?
Yeah.
Because we can't bear to be to not take action when we see something unjust, right? When we see something that's wrong, our calculative side says, don't do anything,
Yeah.
right? Let someone else complain about it. Let someone else vote the other way. Let someone else stand up, right? And put their bodies on the line,
Yeah.
not us, right? But then we can't also cope somehow. There's a conscience, right? And we can't cope with this. So then we tell ourselves a narrative, a story that, oh, but if I stood up, then, I get that 3 o'clock knock on the door, I will, my job will, I lose, my promotion will be frozen, all this kind of thing, right? So it becomes a way of coping, or excusing one's own inaction and inactivity,
Mm.
I think, right? So I don't, does that answer your
No,
question? Your question was, is there
no, it does.
fear,
It
right?
absolutely
Yeah.
does. You gave more than what I wanted as well. So the coping part,
Hmm.
that's really intriguing to me, right?
But
Because
it's true, right?
it's an excuse.
Many of us feel,
Yeah.
I mean, we believe we ought to do
Yeah.
something, but we sort of either are too exhausted, right? There's no
Yeah.
bandwidth, because life in meritocracy also
Yeah.
means you got to work like hell in
Yeah.
Singapore, right? So we're all exhausted people. I mean, the ideology of meritocracy is not just about placing you in different parts of the hierarchy. It's also designed to exhaust you physically, right? So that your idea of surviving in a place, and not even prospering, just surviving in a place like Singapore, is to work like crazy, and you don't have time for anything other than your own concerns,
Right.
right? And the concerns of your family, for example.
Right.
So that really, that's really the fearful thing, right? If you don't have time to go and kind of do something that benefits something larger than
Yeah.
yourself, and because you can't physically bring yourself to do it, you have to tell a story that the consequences are going to be severe, and it's unfair for you to expect me to take that risk, and so on and so forth, right? So the fear narrative is really useful for control,
Yeah.
top-down control, but it's also useful for absolving us of the responsibility of actually standing up and speaking out and taking
And
action.
this ties in, I think, beautifully to what we discussed earlier. Like we need a semi-divine person to help us. We need a hero. No, all of us have to do. Democracy is hard work, right? All of us
Yeah,
have to do something, right? So instead of
yeah,
looking for other people to save
yeah.
us, right? Thank you. No, actually the reason I asked, even though as I said I got more than what I asked for, is many years ago when I was still in an undergrad. So Michael Farmer, then Speaker of Parliament, or maybe before, he was Speaker of Parliament, he came to Prof. Hussein's class, and I asked him about the climate of fear, and a lot of people still don't want to speak out. And then the first response he gave was, "But you are here." I
Yeah,
mean, it's
yeah.
very
There's a
predictable.
formulaic
You're here.
answer.
You are here. You are not afraid. I don't see
Yeah,
people afraid. And then I thought that was a thing of the past. And
yeah,
just at the IPS,
yeah,
Corina of Aware asked Minister Edwin Tong the question, and the response was the
yeah,
exact
yeah.
same thing.
You
And
know the part two of that, right? It's like you are here. Then the second thing is, what do you want to
yeah,
say that you can't say?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the other part of the
Yeah,
formula.
there's a reason why I was fearful to, and I cannot say to begin with. But and I will say this, and next time I'm asked that, right, I'll say, yeah, I am scared.
Yeah,
I am scared. I am scared.
yeah, yeah. Feed
But
the.
I am scared, and I think I am, I guess, a bit more courageous than most Singaporeans, but I'm still
Mm,
scared. I'm still scared about what I can say, what I cannot say sometimes, but I still do it. Most times, right? But even
yeah.
then, not all the time, right? So,
For sure.
I
I mean, I think the mechanism of control is a lot more sophisticated now, right?
yeah,
If you ask me, I think it's worse now. I mean, of course, it depends on, but I think it's worse now because you can't point to anything. When the repressive kind of things are more explicit, at least you can say, there it
right,
is,
right,
right?
right,
Now you can't even do that, right? And you
right,
have to, you know it's happening, but you
right.
have no evidence of it. And I think that's the toughest kind of
Yeah,
um
you can't feel if you can't prove it in court, then it's not true, right?
uh
Yeah, so
but
yeah,
I'm glad at the same time that visibility is kind of appearing, right? This is sort of behind the scenes kind of, and of course this doesn't happen to everyone, right? It's just
yeah,
people who matter to the system,
exactly.
who are
Yeah,
potentially destabilizing the
yes,
system. Parts of this story, and this again is through a certain kind of courage, right? People are exposing it, right? It's hard to have the full picture,
yeah,
but you can see parts of it.
right.
Like suddenly you'll see that assessment form from NUS about
What was
who
that?
can be invited, who cannot be invited,
What
right?
was that?
These parts of the story are all sort of appearing, and I think this is tipping point kind of idea, right? Now we can say, okay, I mean the system is fairly stable because it knows what people want and what people are scared of, and it just plays out these things. But as people get more used to this idea of showing, right,
Yeah,
exposing, right, and then you can see that the other parts of the story already appearing, I think there'll be much, it won't be about courage anymore, right? It'll be
yeah,
just a bit more normalized,
right,
for us to say, look, this is not right, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.